Hello and welcome to this episode of Up Your Vibe. And today we're going to talk about something that I had an experience with myself. And I'm sure that all of you unconsciously have these experiences, but you're just not aware of your inner child until it's brought into your focus of attention. So I was treating a client once and I won't say what the issues were, but she was suffering some difficulties in her life. And I thought that it might be a good idea to take her back to her inner child, to try and see if some of the things that she was experiencing were related to that inner child. And she was all in agreement with this. And when I took her back to the ages before 5 years of age, she all of a sudden went into this absolute rage and was furious with me to taking her back to memories that she'd repressed for such a long time and that she realised were the cause of some of her issues today. So for me, that was a validation that there is such a thing as an inner child. And we know when we're in that inner child state, when we're having a good time, maybe at the beach. And I have to confess, I really love taking my kids to the pantomime, well, when they were children. And I miss those little things that we used to do as children. But I'm also aware that I use that behaviour today sometimes when I flip. So someone who's quite an expert in this area is Sheila Hagan, and she's my guest speaker for today. Hello, Sheila. How are you doing?
Hi, Paula. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
I am really looking forward to this show because I've quite a lot of experience in the inner child work, and I believe that it's an absolutely valid thing for us to look into.
Absolutely.
So you've studied the inner child and acting it out for many years, haven't you, Sheila?
Yes, I have. It's a fascinating subject because in actual fact, of course, we were all children once, and we still carry that inner child with us, whether it's good or bad or indifferent or okay, we still have that inner child within us. It's part of who we are.
And you deal really a lot with childhood trauma, don't you, in the inner child aspect?
Well, it's really about dealing with the adult who's not coping with life. So
Yeah.
Any adult who is finding life difficult or unfulfilling, or they want more joy, more happiness, more love, all of those kind of things always relate back to inner child trauma. And that's trauma with a capital T or trauma with a small t.
And what you do is you talk about healing that inner child to help us move into our adult state more often.
Yes, that's right.
We are in adult state a lot of the time, aren't we?
Maybe.
We are in adult state some of the time then.
Some of the time, for sure. And when we can recognise when we're feeling adult, we can recognise the times we're not feeling adult. And that's the interesting thing. So healing the inner child is about integrating the inner child that lives within us and making sure that child feels safe. And then we can stay in adulthood. We can't stay in adulthood when our inner child is frightened, scared, kicking off, having a temper tantrum. We join the inner child. In fact, we step back as adults and we allow the inner child to live our life, and very unsuccessfully, because small children do not know how to live in an adult world. And that's where the confusion starts.
Exactly. And if you're using the behaviour as a child to deal with adult problems, the result is often, like I said earlier, you will flip a switch somehow and just explode into this inner child and start stamping your feet and shouting. I've done it myself, so I do know. I have to admit, I have been there.
Yes. Yeah.
So if someone were to address these issues of the inner child, what would they expect as an outcome for their life?
Well, let me put it a different way round. Let me explain that when we're between the age of 0 to about 5 or 6, we start producing an inner roadmap, like a roadmap. We learn how, for example, let me give you an example. If a baby, a very small baby, is crying, and the parent, for whatever reason, perhaps the child's got colic, or perhaps they've been advised to let the child cry it out, or whatever. But if you were left as a baby to cry for a long period of time, you might grow up with the feeling that you don't matter, that you're not heard. And that starts to form the roadmap. So no matter what happens during our life, we feel that we're not heard, we don't matter. So we start to develop feelings of inadequacy, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, and all those kind of feelings. So when that roadmap is complete by the age of 5 or 6, we actually live the rest of our life using that same roadmap.
It's quite sad, really, isn't it?
It's quite frightening in as much because the roadmap becomes outdated.
Yes.
The roadmap, as we grow older and we have adult experiences and we have an adult life, but we're still using the childhood roadmap unless we integrate it.
So how would somebody know that they have an inner child? And
well, some classic ones are that we deny what our feelings are. We deny our true feelings. Maybe we feel that we're not able to express our needs to people because we feel unsafe, we feel vulnerable. We try to live up to others' expectations, which are perhaps not real for us. We feel insecure, even though we know we're secure. We've locked the doors and we're safe within our homes or whatever. But the feeling inside is that if we feel insecure, that's an inner child feeling. Pretty much any time we get very angry or very frightened, that's always an inner child feeling. Any strong emotion is inner child. Mm-hmm. We're usually very serious about life if we are not integrated with our inner child. We don't feel we can play. Many adults don't feel as though they can actually play. We might feel that we have no creativity. That's another sign that our inner child is not integrated.
A lot of these sound like limiting beliefs.
Yes, they are limiting beliefs, but they're caused by that roadmap, that belief from childhood that we're unsafe for whatever reason. So like I say, the child crying might develop feelings of not being enough, not being heard, not matter. I don't matter in the world. Yes. Maybe when we cried as very small children, maybe we had a sibling that teased us or laughed at us. So we're not going to feel safe to be vulnerable in adulthood.
I had one client whose mum dropped him at the age of 2 years old and he hurt his head. And that feeling of not being safe in the world actually carried through right up until his adult, until he made the connections.
Yes.
This was the problem. He wasn't feeling safe in the world because he was dropped on his head by his mother. And the effect between the relationship between the mother and child was also affected because of that. The trust between them was broken because he felt damaged by her.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's part of his roadmap. And unless we actually address it and update that roadmap, like we would on Google Maps, unless we do that, unless we update it and make it relevant to where we're going today, after all, if we're using an old roadmap, we may not know there's a new motorway open just up the road. So it would save us time if we knew the updated version.
So how would somebody do that, Sheila? I know you talk about there are 3 simple steps to staying an adult or staying in your adult state. How would somebody do that? Because it sounds really simple, just 3 simple steps.
Yes, well, they are simple steps, and like most things in life, it's simple, but maybe a little challenging to put into process on your own. Maybe you need a little help. But the 3 steps that I would say is, first of all, as an adult, as a human being, check in with yourself. That's the number one thing. And what I mean by that is check in and ask yourself right now, how do I feel? What do I feel about this? or this situation or this situation. Check in with your feelings, because adults tend not to do that. Children do it automatically. They're always in touch with their feelings. They will let you know if they're feeling unhappy or frightened or scared or whatever. But as adults, we've learned to control, or the inner child have felt unsafe growing up. So as an adult, we've hidden that, we've buried, we've stuffed down our feelings. So the first thing to do is check in at any time over anything. It could be a good feeling that you have, but if you ask yourself, how do I feel right now? And then wait for the answer. And that's the first step. That will tell you straight away whether you're feeling a little bit apprehensive or a bit unsafe or happy or joyful or whatever. The second thing to do is to appreciate that your inner child is just like any other small child. So hold that child. Hold it with you. Take it with you. When you get in the car, take your inner child with you. When you're having your meal, take your child with you. Always.
What does that mean, Sheila?
To be aware of this little person that's living inside you, and to physically take them with you, just like you would a little child. You wouldn't abandon your child at home and go off in the car for the day. You would take your child with you.
Yeah.
So we need to take our inner child with us.
And what would be the benefits of that?
Because your child will then begin to understand and begin to trust you as to the fact that you're going to look after them, you're going to take care of them, and they're safe. That's the most important thing. A child needs to feel safe, and the child will do anything to stay safe. They will learn how to stay safe no matter what's going on with their actual world as children. So we learn to stay safe, and we need to understand that as adults, it's our job to ensure that our inner child stays safe.
And
so let me give you an example.
I was going to say, how would we do that?
So I can remember back when I first gave one of my first public lectures. It was to a group of, obviously a group of people. It was about 80 people, and I was terrified. I was shaking visibly, head to foot, and thinking, I'm not going to be able to get any words out. I had all the information, great information, and then I realised that I wasn't frightened. My adult wasn't frightened. The logic of standing up and delivering my message was really important to me, and I was really excited about it.
Yeah.
But my child was thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. I really...
Yeah, I know that feeling.
In that instant, public speaking is one of the most scary things for most people.
Yes.
But it's actually the child that's scared of it, because the child has never done it before.
Yes.
So metaphorically, in my mind, I simply put my arm around my inner child and said, you're okay. I've got this. You don't have to do it. Just stay close.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be safe. And immediately I felt a huge relief come over me. Yeah. And the shaking stopped. And the voice came out.
It's very, very frightening doing your first public speaking. Yes. I remember when I did mine, and I stood in front of an audience of around, I think there must have been around 120 people. And I just stood there and I could not see anything. The people in front of me, everything was black, and I was shivering inside and out. Because as a baby, if you don't want to see anything as a child, you just close your eyes. You can't see anything, can you?
Absolutely.
If it's not there, it's not going to affect you.
So what happens in that instance, you see, as that roadmap that you have within you that says, this is too scary, I'm going to simply close my eyes, is what happened. So you were using your old roadmap for something that was not relevant. It wasn't relevant to the life that you were living. Yeah. So we need to update the roadmap. Mm-hmm. We need to update those beliefs.
And it didn't help me at all, actually. Because I couldn't do the public speaking either. It was terrible. So yeah, that's
Well,
when
it would be
we
your child that's frightened.
yes.
The logic of the adult, the truth and fact and truth, we call it. The adult is always fact and truth. There's
Yes.
no blame, there's no criticism, there's no judgment. But the fact and truth of the matter is that as an adult, it was actually something you wanted to do.
Of course, and being told you're just a girl, you're not worthy of
That's
anything,
right.
you're not clever, you're not intelligent.
Mm.
All of a sudden, all those things come flooding back to
Well,
you.
that's the trigger, you see. We
That
call
was
it
the
the trigger. So when you're feeling afraid, it triggers that overpoweringly strong emotion, which again is always in a child, as I said before. Any very strong emotion is always your inner child.
So what is the third step?
The third step is to actually speak to your child. So we've checked in with ourselves and we realise perhaps we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling frightened. Let's think about giving a talk. So we recognise that feeling of overwhelm. We've held the child, we've said it's okay, we've kept them close to us. The third step is to actually have a conversation with your child and speak to them and explain that this is okay. It's okay. I've got this. You're safe. I'm in charge.
Would you do that out loud or would
Do
you
it
do it
inside.
inside?
Inside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might look a bit silly in the middle of Sainsbury's talking to you in a chat.
Yes, indeed. Although in therapy, when I'm talking to clients, we do talk out loud because it's much more powerful in a therapy session, and clients can move quickly forward, knowing that they're safe as adults with the truth and fact and truth, and disassociating that emotional energy which actually belongs to the child.
Yes.
And once that's all calmed down and our child becomes feeling safe and getting to understand that they don't have to live this horrible, scary adult life anymore, that you're going to do it, then everything starts to settle down and things start to integrate. And the end result is, of course, that you feel more confident, more aware, you have more joy, more fun, more creativity, more passion. You start to know what you want to do in the world and you can move forward and do it.
Yeah, and of course you do a 6-month course on inner child work, but if somebody wanted to come to you for therapy, would you take them along a timeline, or how would somebody go through
No,
therapy?
I don't work on a timeline because my work with inner children is we don't need to visit the trauma. There's no need to revisit that trauma, whether it's big or small. Okay. We don't need to hear stories because we've all had childhood trauma. That's the truth of it, whether it's small or big trauma.
Absolutely.
Even if we've been left crying in our crib for longer than we thought it was necessary as a baby, that's still traumatic to that baby. You see a crying baby, very distraught and very upset. That's traumatic.
It is.
So without any actual verbal or physical or sexual abuse, we really don't need to visit those times. So we don't need to relive that horror or any kind of horror. But we can relearn, we can remap the roadmap. We can begin to explain to our inner child that was then, this is now, and I'm going to take care of you.
And this concept of not having to revisit the trauma is very well accepted now.
Yes.
I don't see any benefit whatsoever in going back to revisit trauma. And some people still insist they have to. I want to know the truth, but the truth is there is no truth.
That's right.
So,
it's our perception of that event that we saw as a child, which may be very wrong or right. There is no wrong or right, like you say. And that's why it's important to recognise when we're adult, we can stay in fact or truth.
Yes. A perception to me is circumstantial because it relies on us, not anybody else. There's no input in it. No one else can give their evidence. So it's your circumstantial evidence of your events. And that's what makes it quite tricky because you're trying to make decisions on your own perceptions.
Well, this is why it's so difficult as an adult if we're still using that old roadmap. If we still feel that it's not safe to be vulnerable, or it's not safe to show our real feelings, or it's not safe to express our needs, you can see that as an adult, we're not living fulfilled lives.
No.
So,
I
but
can see that.
by understanding that the how the inner child got to that point, we can then reassure her. We can get to know our inner child. They can get to know us, because it may be many, many years since we've ever spoken to our inner child. They may be a little reluctant at first. They may be a little shy. That's okay. We sit with that. And that's what I mean by holding our child. We hold that space and we say, it's okay, but I'm here for you now. Yes, it was horrible.
When someone is in this situation now and they've just suddenly realised by listening to this show, oh my God, I understand now why I feel the way that I do. How can they start to soothe that inner child and to overcome that overwhelm that they're feeling?
Yes, it's a tricky one, but in fact what happens usually is that we start to recognise inner child behaviour in other people first. We recognise, but when step number one, which was check in with yourself, another way of checking in with yourself is to ask yourself, how old do I feel? And in any given moment, if we're feeling overwhelmed and we say, how old do I feel? You might be very surprised at the answer that you get. It might be 6, 7, 8, and we might be in our 50s or 60s. But it's the feeling, and you can observe this outside of yourself. You can observe adults behaving like children, speaking like children, feeling like children. What happens is it triggers the other person to also be a child. So you end up with two adults acting out like children in a playground. Exactly. And that's why arguments never get anywhere.
I know, when you argue and it gets out of control and you can't even find the reasoning or the correct response anymore, and it says, no, it's your fault, and then the other person saying, no, it's your fault. And
that's right. But if I were to say, if I could be a fly on the wall and say, excuse me, how old do you feel? They'd both go, 6. So once we start to recognise that we're two entities, if you like, with this adult, which is fact and truth, which doesn't get involved in arguments because there is no fact or truth in that, and we're child, and child is maybe frightened, feeling unsafe, feeling insecure, feeling ridiculed, feeling humiliated or shamed. All of those sort of feelings are nothing to do with adulthood. But of course, we know as therapists that many, many, many adults feel shamed or feel ridiculed or feel that it's not safe to be vulnerable or to express their needs. And those are all inner child feelings, you see. It's really, really important. I think everybody, every single person, is the more powerful you are in the country, the more you need inner child work.
One of my biggest triggers is people taking authority over me, and even now I allow that to take me back to my vulnerable inner child. At times that's when the switch flips and I end up going back into my inner child and ranting and raving. It doesn't happen very often. It was only once last year, so I think that's pretty good. But I recognized it the moment it had happened. I recognized what I'd done and I stormed off and sat down. And the amazing thing was that I sat down by a bookcase and there was a book right at the side of me called Breaking Negative Thought Patterns.
Yes.
And when I flipped the book open, it opened onto the page magically, triggering your vulnerable inner child.
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God, what have I just done?
But you recognised it, and that's the beautiful thing, is recognising where these feelings are. They're not part of our adult life. They're not part of our modern roadmap that we use now, or it shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be. And when we recognise that we're sort of acting out of character or overreacting to a situation, that we look back and we think that was not good.
It wasn't, but what it also gives you the opportunity to do is to resolve it there and then, instead of carrying it on and it was your fault that you said that, and it goes on, and you maybe even fall out with that person.
Yes.
It gives you the opportunity to say, okay, hands up, I admit I was triggered by you, the way that you acted. Can we discuss this so that we don't have to go down this road again?
Yeah, and that, of course, is the factual truth part of the adult. Yeah. This is the fact, fact that I feel that I overreacted, the fact that I want to address it, the truth of the situation, all from an adult point of view. And when we step into adulthood, we're remarkably calm, and we're remarkably sensible, and we're remarkably able to cope.
Yes.
Always.
Yes. Absolutely. It just gives you that calmness, gives you the time to access the conscious part of your memory and the unconscious part of your memory to find the resolve in order to deal with that situation. Even if it's happened and you've flipped and everything's gone terribly wrong, you can still stand up and take responsibility and say, okay, I know that what I did was out of character, but can we talk about this and find a resolution? And it's always important to resolve your issues before the end of the day.
Yes, that's always a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also what's important is to reassure your inner child, even retrospectively, after the event, by saying something like, yes, we got into a bit of a pickle yesterday, but it's okay. You're okay. I'm okay. We're okay. And it's okay to feel scared. It is scary sometimes, but you don't need to do this. I can do it. So just stay close to me. Imagine that you've got a small child sitting on your lap. Imagine, and that's you, a small version of you. What you wouldn't do is ask your little child to go and cook the dinner.
No.
Or go and drive the car. You wouldn't.
No, but we expect them to go and do our battles for us.
Yes, interesting, isn't it? So as soon as we acknowledge that fear of the inner child, as soon as we actually say, it is scary, I understand you're scared, but I'm here now for you. I will never leave you. I'm always here for you. I always will love you. You don't need to worry anymore. I'm going to love you and protect you always. You will feel that inner child just soften and say, oh, okay. And that's it.
Yeah.
And we can get on with being adult.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling, suddenly you realise what's happened and you know that you have the ability to do something about it without the drama.
Yeah, that's right, indeed. So the three things that I think are really, really important is check in with yourself. First of all, you have to understand if you're reacting to your inner child or not, whether it's being triggered or not, and then hold your inner child, just keep them close to you. And the third thing is to have a discussion, build up a dialogue with your child, build up trust and love, and she will feel safer and safer and safer, and will start to then show you how to have fun, how to have passion, how to be enthusiastic, how to understand your creativity. Life starts to get bigger and softer all at the same time.
I think one of the issues as well when you're in child mode is telling your story over and over again about the childhood traumas. As an adult, we would recognise that we really don't need to keep telling those stories because they're not benefiting us.
Yeah. That in itself is an inner child trait, really, in having to justify, perhaps, or verify why we exist. Yeah. So when our needs are not met as children, whatever those needs are, if they're not met as a child, we can never grow from that. We get stuck. It's like a record that gets stuck in that groove. Yes. We just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, whatever it is, whether it's telling the story or acting out a certain behaviour at certain times. But we can then start to have a dialogue with our inner child, and we can start to meet those needs ourselves for our inner child. So, like I said earlier, for example, intimacy is learned as a child. If we're hugged and kissed and tickled and loved and touched and caressed and tucked into bed and read stories to, we learn that being intimate with our parents is a beautiful thing. If those needs are not met, if we're ridiculed or shamed, if we want to cuddle, if we're laughed at, if we're pushed away, we learn that it's not safe to be intimate.
Mm.
And that's very difficult, because we, as an adult, we know we want to be intimate, but the feeling is, I'm very afraid of this. And there are many people who are in happy relationships but are afraid to be intimate.
Mm.
And that's because they're still using that old roadmap which said that being intimate is not a safe thing to do.
Yes, and alternatively, there's many people elect not to have relationships because the fear of that intimacy and
Yes.
getting hurt.
Yes.
It's such a common story, you know, and there's lots of lonely people who could actually be happy if they could learn to trust their inner child. And, you know, it is difficult. I understand that it's difficult.
Well, I would put that the other way around. I would say it's if the inner child can learn to trust us.
Yes.
So we're the adult here. We're telling, you know, we've got this. We've got the knowledge, the experience. We have an understanding of the world from an adult perspective. Remember, fact and truth.
Yes.
So, and we also know about evidence. Well, is there any evidence for me to be afraid? No, but I'm still afraid. That's when we know it's inner child. So we need to build up a trust for our inner child to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think from a very young age that we are able to negotiate things. In the drama triangle, in Stephen Cartman's drama triangle, one situation is maybe the child wants something and it's gone to the mother and said, Mum, can I have this? And the mum said, no. So the mum becomes the perpetrator and this child becomes the victim. So then they'll look for a rescuer. So they'll go to the dad and crying to dad, oh, Mum said this and she said, I can't have that. So then the dad becomes the rescuer and goes to mum, what's the problem? Why can't she have this? So I think at a very young age, we're taught the drama triangle and it becomes unconscious for us. And this is also a model that we use throughout life so many times every day.
Yes, it's that same, it's a roadmap or a model, whichever word you want to say. But what that teaches us is as adults, we're looking for a rescuer.
Yeah, we are. We do this.
Our inner child is looking for a rescuer. However, the fact and truth parent or the adult may be looking for an equal.
Yeah.
So then we get into a difficult situation with knowing what it is that we actually want.
So if we can equate that to a day at the office, so we're at the office and someone in the office who has authority over us has said something to us that we don't like. So then what we're going to do is we feel the victim, they're the perpetrator. So we're going to go and find somebody else that we can go and gossip to about what their perpetrator has just done to them. Yes. And get them on their side. And I see this virtually every day.
And of course, that's buying into the inner child. We're allowing the inner child to try and sort this out, where really the adult, the fact and truth, might look at it very differently. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, we don't need to find a rescuer because we can rescue ourselves.
So now the audience is aware of this, maybe they can watch out for this in their everyday interactions, because
absolutely
gossip definitely is a child behaviour, isn't it?
Yes. I have got a little 10-point fact sheet which I'm offering as a freebie for the show.
Fantastic.
So 10 steps towards healing your inner child, which is free. All people need to do is drop me an email at my email address, if you could be kind enough to put that up. I'll be happy to forward that to anyone who would like to see it.
That is brilliant.
I also have one-day workshops from time to time. Best way of finding that is Facebook.
Which I've been to, and they're absolutely amazing.
Oh, thank you, Paula. That's kind. So, yeah.
So One of the points that I wanted to ask you about is, how do we harmonise the inner child and the adult?
Well, when the inner child is feeling safe and secure, there is no harmony. We're already harmonised. We don't need to do anything. We just live a happier, more safe, secure life. We don't fall into those childhood dramas that many, many, many people, I see it every day. You only have to go to the supermarket and see people acting out as children. Supermarkets are great places to watch people. And especially for perhaps a young mum whose toddler is acting up, and the mum immediately is triggered to go into child mode. So you actually have 2 3-year-olds in the middle of the supermarket screaming and shouting at each other.
Yeah.
Both children, you see.
Yeah, there was
that
that.
thing.
There was that.
That thing is, one of them is actually an adult, an actual physical adult, and the other one is a child. And also, by the way, it's interesting to know, if we step out of our adulthood and allow the inner child to throw that tantrum, it's potentially a very dangerous situation. And people who are very violent, and we've heard a lot about violent crime in the news the last few weeks, that's their inner child actually acting out as an inner child, but they're now in an adult body. So it's a very potentially frightening situation, because a 3-year-old child clearly doesn't have the strength of a 30-year-old man. But the 30-year-old man in acting out child mode is often very violent.
Yes.
And so it's something that is probably, like a lot of these sort of therapies that are classed a little bit wacky, a little bit woo-woo, way ahead of its time. And I think that inner child work is something that every counsellor, every therapist should be aware of, and we should be integrating and teaching people how to update their roadmap, for sure.
Yes. So Sheila, when you talk about your one-day workshops, they are in a physical location, aren't they?
Yes, they're held in Bournemouth, in Dorset.
Yeah. So are there going to be any one-day workshops that you can do, or sessions, online sessions?
Well, yes, I think that there might be a possibility with my friend's help.
Yeah. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yes, we could do that.
You're working within a child work. The more people understand about their inner child, the more they can step into their adult state and act more adult.
Yeah.
So to me, it's been so beneficial just attending your workshops. And I would love actually to go on the 6-month course that you do. You do a 6-month course as well.
Yes.
What could someone expect if they came on a 6-month course with you?
Well, the 6-month course is really the most powerful and transformative work that you'll ever do. It's actually 6 sessions, so it's once a month for six sessions. So it's over a 6-month period. And we do it, well, it's just, in fact, I would like to, next time I do a 6-month course, is to actually ask permission to video people at the beginning and at the end, and just let them observe the changes in their physical appearance, because people start to feel relaxed and start to be able to feel confident about getting in touch with their own happiness and their own power. It's really transformative. We learn how to approach our inner child. We learn how to gain confidence with our inner child. We perhaps write to them, we talk to them, we play with them. We also look after ourselves in that process as well. So we learn how to stay adult and stay factual and truthful, because none of this work is intended to be critical or judgmental about our parenting, our parents' intentions. Now, of course, some people have had what you might call beautiful childhoods. They'll still be traumatized. They'll still have trauma with a small t. And other people have maybe experienced abuse or trauma with a capital T. excuse me, my voice is going. How interesting.
Interesting.
So, but as I said earlier, there's no need to actually revisit that. But I would like to say right now that none of my inner child work is aimed at criticising the parents, the father and mother, or your carers that brought you up. It's not about that. It's not about placing blame. No. It's about the person's feelings and their feeling about being safe in the world.
Yes.
And it's lovely to feel safe in the world. We are safe in the world.
It is, but I think it's also important to accept that you are the one that chose the journey. I will always remember taking a mindfulness course, and I kept going on about how bad my mother was, blah, 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 blah. And in the end, he took me to one side and he said to me, Paula, he said, you chose to be born a girl to your parents.
Yes.
You chose your parents to teach them the lessons to make you the person you are today.
Yes.
And in that moment, it was like the biggest aha moment of my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is no doubt that as a parent, we will mess our child up in some way. They will blame us for something that they feel that we did wrong to them. And I would say exactly the same to that child. You know, I chose to come to this world at this time as a girl. I chose my parents. A lot of people find that very difficult, but I accept that now. And the difference that it's made to my life is absolutely astronomical.
Yeah.
I've stopped the blame game now.
Yeah.
I thank my mother and my father for making me so strong and resilient.
That's right. When we update that roadmap, that's the sort of thing that we get from it. Because prior to that, where you were placing blame, that's a child, an inner child emotion. When we're looking to blame someone else, that's finding you were talking about the triangle earlier.
Yeah, the drama
we're
triangle.
Looking for someone to validate our feelings. So we look to blame somebody, and we feel satisfied that it's somebody else's fault.
Yes.
It doesn't actually change the feelings, but we feel somewhat vindicated because we've blamed someone else.
Yes.
But when we can take responsibility, remember adult fact and truth.
Yes.
So when we take responsibility for what we're doing, life is so much easier.
It is, seriously. It really is. And I am writing a book at this moment in time about the narcissistic mother figure, and it's hurting me to have to go back and look at it, and then I have to ground myself afterwards because I don't want to talk about it. And the book is to make people realize it doesn't matter what your childhood trauma was. You can overcome it and be the person you're meant to be and learn from your journey.
That's right. It's all a learning process, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And a growing up process. You know, we've suffered whatever we suffered as children, and we had the consequences of that when we were teenagers. We perhaps made bad mistakes, or we made, let's say, difficult choices and found ourselves in sticky situations in young adulthood, in our 20s. Maybe we suddenly woke up one morning and found ourselves in an abusive marriage, and so on. And meanwhile, we've had children of our own. The whole thing, whoa, hang on, slow down. Let's just look at our inner child.
Yes.
And I would really love to have the opportunity of doing some of this work with very much younger people. I've been blessed to work with people in their 20s. And I think how amazing for that family to integrate their inner child at such a young age rather than their 50s and 60s.
Yes.
Which are...
I think a lot of societal problems now could be addressed from being in primary school. You know, if we teach our children these strategies, how to manage emotions, how to be resilient, and instead of putting so much on maths, on spelling, on writing, you know, we need to socialize our children, how to interact and communicate and respect each other, rather than just this blanket measure of you've got to learn to do maths, you've got to learn to do English, you've got to learn to read, you've got to learn to write. Far more important is how to be a wonderful human being.
Absolutely. And one that can achieve great things in their life, because when we're feeling confident and happy and secure in ourselves, we can spread our wings, we can fly, we can do anything.
Exactly, Cher. I mean, you've witnessed the changes in me over the 2 years that you've known me. And it's been such a therapeutic thing to work with you and to find out more about myself.
Yes.
Because I was very focused on getting justice for all the bad things that's happened to me. And when it happened or it didn't happen, it still released me because I was able to look at my truth and think, well, what was all that about? What did it matter anyway? So the truth is, from that experience of going into Crown Court, what I learned is that I don't need any jury or any court or anybody to validate my own feelings, which is really interesting because I would never have accepted that before.
That's a powerful thing, you see. And what happened during that process is that you were, even at a subconscious level, able to differentiate between your inner child and your truth and factual adult.
Yes.
And the factual adult knows that they're okay. It's the inner child who wants validation.
Yes, I mean, after I walked away from that, and even though I didn't win the court case, people thought I would be devastated, but actually I wasn't.
No.
I wasn't, because I'm okay. My inner child's okay. Everything's okay, so it doesn't really matter.
That's right. So there's living proof that even with something as traumatic as a court case, where the inner child might be absolutely terrified, because here you are putting all your feelings for the public to be humiliated or shamed or whatever. But somewhere in that process, you became adult and fact and truth, and perhaps because of the process of it, we know logically we need to stay adult in those sort of situations.
I actually felt liberated.
Yeah. No, that's a really good process of integrating your inner child.
Yeah, people said, well, how can you feel liberated? You lost the court case. It didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
What's done's done. I can't change anything in the past. I'm not going back there. What I can change is myself and love and care for my own inner child. And she's happy.
Yes.
I've given her all the love and assurance that she needs to feel happy. And actually, I love to go out and do really childish things. You know, I will go out and I'll roll down a hill, or I'll go and sit in the sand and build sandcastles. I still love to do childish behaviours because my inner child does.
Well, your child has now got the confidence to shine through, you see. That's the thing. And like I said earlier, when we're integrated, our inner child will then start to show us how to have fun, how to be carefree and, you know, just enthusiastic and childlike.
And creative, because that's where creation was born.
Yes,
child. So you can, you know, I found I've been far more creative since acknowledging my inner child and helping her and hugging her and holding her close. You know, following the strategies that you taught me has been absolutely liberating as well.
I mean, I love the word liberating, because that's exactly what it is. It liberates our child, and it liberates us as to be adult, because we are adult, and this is the life that we're wanting to live, and we can create the life that we truly want then, without the fears and the insecurities and the shaming and obligations that we felt that we had, which was all in a child.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's 100% effective all the time. You know, people can't go into this and think, okay, we're going to do all this work, we're going to love and mature and nature our inner child. There are times where you can still get triggered.
Oh, yes.
It still happens. It doesn't mean you're a robot. You know, you are still human. And as a human, you still can get triggered. But it's how you react afterwards.
That's right.
That's the important thing, and how you resolve the issue.
And I would say that what generally happens is we start to recognise, maybe 3 months ago when we had a little outburst, we start to recognise, oh yeah, maybe that was inner child. Maybe that's what is meant by this inner child thing.
Yeah.
And then gradually we come to recognize it quicker and quicker, so that we may recognize something we did last week, or then we recognize something we did yesterday. Then we get to this point where we recognize we did something an hour ago.
Yes.
Much easier to say, oh, okay, I can still fix that.
Yeah. So do you have, Sheila, any final tips for anybody who's actually been triggered by this and can see that this is them?
What I would say to anyone who's feeling perhaps a little traumatized by what we've said today is reassure yourself, first of all, as an adult, be factual and truthful with yourself, and make sure that you are factually and truthfully safe in your environment right now. And once you're okay with that, then put your arm around your imaginary child and just hold them close and reassure your inner child that you've got it. You're in control. They don't need to worry.
And if someone wants to contact you for a consultation, are they able to do that through email?
Yes, through email or through Facebook, whichever is easier for them. Do you have my email address?
Yes, I'll put it on the link.
Thank you.
And are you happy to do online therapy through Zoom as well?
Yes, Zoom or Skype. Yeah.
So there's no boundaries, is there, for anybody to get in contact with you and to start?
That's right. Please feel free. Please get in touch with me, especially if you've heard something today that has moved you in any way. Let me reassure you.
It's giving me goosebumps, that is. just talking about that, because I'm so attuned to the fact now that this can liberate so many people.
Yes.
And help them take responsibility and stop playing the blame game.
Yeah, and the victim game as well. There's nothing sadder than, or more frustrating and more disempowering than feeling a victim of anything.
Even if you are a victim, you don't need to keep carrying it on.
Yeah,
that's the important thing. I don't think there's anybody who can walk away from anything saying, I've never been a victim. Most of us have been in some form or another. So it's just putting it aside, healing the inner child and getting on with your life.
Well, I think, you know, like you said earlier, this inner child work doesn't make us into emotionless robots. I want to reassure people that having strong emotions is normal and natural.
Yes.
If, for example, as an adult, if I see something that makes me angry, for example, if I saw a man kicking a dog, I would be very angry.
Yeah.
And quite rightly.
Yes.
I would expect to feel angry.
Yes.
But I don't expect to feel angry in 3 weeks' time. So any strong emotion that keeps reoccurring, that keeps popping up over a period of time, that's inner child. When we are emotional about something in the moment, as an adult, we deal with it straight away, and then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
We're not angry or upset an hour later.
So do you have a favourite quote that you like? And I've put you on the spot here.
You have, haven't you, a bit? I think my favourite quote is to always check in with yourself. And it's across the board with lots of different therapies. As you know, I do a lot of manifesting and empowering workshops. So my overall good quote is, check in with yourself. How do I feel?
Mm-hmm.
I'll wait for the answer.
I'll tell you that I feel absolutely fabulous.
Good, that's fantastic. So do I.
And you know, as people reach maturer ages, they seem to think that it's the end of the road for them and they've got to wind down to retire. And I'm finding it's quite the opposite. You know,
yes.
I'm years away from retirement and I've never had so much fun in my life. And I really, really do put that down to the work that I've done on myself with people.
Well, I reached retirement age about 10 years ago.
Well, there you go. And look,
and I've never been busier. I'm very busy, and I'm blessed because it's really an honour to work with so many people and help so many people
Yes,
achieve the life that they want to achieve.
This is the era of the silverpreneurs, and you and I are silverpreneurs.
Indeed we are, yes.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Sheila.
Thank you.
I believe you're so inspiring, and I'm sure that other people will as well. And if you've only helped one person today come to terms with, their behaviour as in a child, I feel that's been a success. But I think a lot of people will listen into this and will get benefit from it.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Paula. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
You're welcome. So it's goodbye from Paula here in Poole.
And it's goodbye from Sheila here in Bournemouth.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.